So for the past 15 years, I've been building conventional stick roofs, and I can count on one hand the amount of times I've stood trusses. And now I'm on a job and the entire thing's truss. You're just figuring out as I go along. I've got a pretty decent set of plans that are detailed enough. I've got plenty of measurements on them. And it's just like putting together a bit of Lego with some instructions, or flat pack furniture, I guess, except on a much bigger scale. I'm sure there's plenty of different ways it could be doing things. I mean, there's guys that have probably been doing this for years and years and years and know exactly what they're doing. If you're the type of person, give me a comment and let me know how I can be doing better. But this is how I'm going to get it done and how we're sort of fumbling through it. The first step was finding out where everything went. The trusses were all bundled in their packs relatively close to where they need to go. Like all of these ones were in their packs, all of these ones were in their packs, all these ones were, and so were the carport. But all the fill-ins and everything are sort of stacked based on their size and how well they fit together. So the first step was running through and finding out where all of this went. Once we found out where it went, there's plenty of measurements that were detailed enough to figure out where we needed to mark everything, especially for this big truss through here, which had a couple of specific points it needed to start from, and having the measurements from A to B and how far off the wall it needed to be was super handy. Even this big truss here had a measurement back from the end of this truss, which made it really easy to locate this big blue one and this big blue one. So along with working out where all the trusses needed to go, they were sort of, like I said, they were bundled pretty well, but I still needed to work out where the packs needed to be split and where they went and what way they went up. Along with doing that, I was also out the back setting up the steel work and making sure all of our posts were in the correct location and they were plumb, because it was a cranked steel and the posts were already cut to length. But it was a pretty hectic morning, but eventually got it done and everything got craned up and the boys are up on the roof. They pushed through past Smoko and we ended up having a nice bit of a sit down afterwards. So our next problem is these trusses here are the next ones that continue along, but they're stuck underneath these big ones because the crane couldn't get out any further. And I can't put these big ones in because my carport ones are in the way. And to put carport ones in, I need to go and get some mobile scaffold, build that so I've got access to the middle of them. So a little bit of a conundrum for the afternoon. I think what I might do is just get a temporary prop cut and I'll bash these trusses up and try and pull these ones as much as I can and see what we can do. Hey Bowie, do you want to cut something? Cut a piece of timber to 3200 please mate. And get your prop under this truss here. So you probably have to come all the way, yep, that's it. Put the bottom out. Keep going. Now boot that up. Yeah, keep going, mate. Let's try over here. Up to here and see what that does. Probably just need another one over here, mate, at 3-2. It's nearly there. Yes, Bailey. Love your work. The first issue we ran into was accessing the trusses. Obviously, I could have a bloke run along the edges of the trusses along the top of the wall and get them to where they needed to be and nail them, and some of them even I could walk on through the middle of the house. But in areas like the carport and the main room, which were just wide rooms with no intermediary walls, we ended up just building a system with a mobile and some aluminium planks that we use when we do the eaves to bridge that gap. And then the boys were just either on a scaffold down on the slab or walking along the top plate. In other spots, we pretty much just ran a plank about 100 mil down from the top plate to help fill in those hip end sections. And where we needed a bloke just standing on a 6-foot trestle, pulling measurements and nailing the bottoms where he needed to. Once we had our access problem solved, it was super straightforward. Everything just went up because we'd taken the time to crane everything up and make sure it was the right way. The plans were very, very easy to understand and provided plenty of measurements for where they went, all the blocking in between, so we're able just to stand everything and get it up relatively quickly without any issues. Having the mobile and the plank through the middle just made the whole job so much easier, because I was just stumped on how the hell I was going to get up there and do it. Part of me was going to stand on the trusses up there, but I didn't really trust that too much. So I'm glad I did have access to the mobile scaffold and the aluminium planks. I also didn't know how I was going to access the higher parts of the truncated hip end trusses till I realised once that first girder truss has got everything nailed into it, it's actually pretty solid, and you can just stand on that and work your way from the bottom up. It was actually pretty easy. So I started with this section, which was probably the more complicated out of the whole job, because you've obviously got a 135 degree wall here and then another 135 degree wall here, which sort of throws everything into chaos in this little section here. Like this side here planes up to here with that valley, and this side here planes up this section. But having the 3D model and having this truss, it was actually really easy. I did start with this big truss and this one, and I didn't get any footage of it. And then we decided to fill these in. But like I said, it's got really, really good measurements, and as long as they were followed, it all planed through and worked out really well. The only thing we really had trouble with was the location of this hip, because there was absolutely no measurements for it. There's measurements for like C10 and M2 and J13 and J14, but there was actually no measurement for where H6 was supposed to be on the girder truss. So we kind of just got it to a point where those tops met and everything looked good. We worked out how far that tail should be hanging through and just sort of found a medium point between all of them and went from there. This is the hip fella. So I have measurements for like these ones. Oh, yep, there we go. No, that's for that one. I guess just make sure that we've got... I fucking actually got no idea, guys. What do you reckon? I just take a punt and nail it there?
Well, if it's meant to be that hip one.
It is, but I have no measurements for where it's supposed to go down here. Look at that. I've got measurements for like the C10 and these ones in here, but there's nothing for this. I don't know if we'd be happy to just run off it going up to the other hip. Yeah. All right, C10. Well, in the time it'd take to build the ceiling in this section of roof, we've done the ceiling and pitched it. I just don't know. What have you got there, Bailey? It does show like where it lands on the plate in all of the guess the truss elevations. One thing I can check. That's right. That's about 4 mil. It'd be good if it had a measurement from here to where that hip is supposed to actually be.
$640.
That's like close to what it is supposed to be. But I think I'm just going to nail it there because that's sort of the closest spot, I guess. What's wrong? At this point, everything started to come together. The first couple of hours were pretty slow because we're constantly stopping to double check the plans, make sure the right trusses were going up and everything was in the right spot. It's tempting to think that you're wasting time, but on a roof as complicated as this one, spending an extra minute checking something is a lot quicker than having to pull trusses back out and double check all your measurements later. Once we'd worked through that first section, the rest of the roof started to make a lot more sense. We figured out our system, everyone knew where they needed to be, and we could start making some real progress. One thing that definitely helped on this job was having a detailed set of truss layouts in the 3D model. Instead of trying to guess where the pieces belonged, I could cross-reference everything before committing to it. On a roof with this many different trusses, that's a massive advantage. The other challenge was the access. Normally on a conventional house, you've got a full ceiling framed underneath you, so if you need to be somewhere, you can stand on the ceiling, or if you need to be higher, you can build a scaffold on top of it. On this job, we didn't have that luxury, especially around the hip sections. We had to think ahead of where we could safely stand and how we'd brace everything temporarily and the order we framed it so we didn't create problems for ourselves later. That's one of the things you don't really appreciate until you're doing it. Installing timber is only half the job. Planning how you're actually going to reach everything safely is just as important. Looking back, I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. There are always little things I'll probably change, but if I built the same roof again, but that's how you improve. Every difficult roof teaches you something that makes the next one a little easier. We're definitely not finished yet. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching. Hopefully seeing the thought process behind the build, not just the finished result, has been useful. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing because there's plenty more carpentry content coming. I'll see you in the next one.